You're not going to believe this. But the Simpsons might have actually predicted humans landing on Mars in the year 2026. I know, it sounds completely insane, like one of those clickbait headlines you scroll past at 3 in the morning. But stick with me, because once you hear the details, you'll see why people can't stop talking about this one. And the wildest part, it's not just some vague throwaway gag in an old episode. No, this prediction actually lines up with real NASA plans, private space companies, and even current technology pushing us closer to the red planet than ever before. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever had that moment when you're rewatching The Simpsons? Maybe it's late at night. Maybe you binge watching reruns with a plate of snacks, and suddenly you hear a joke or see a scene and you think, wait a second, that actually came true in real life. Like the time they basically predicted smartwatches. Or when they somehow guessed Disney would buy 20th Century Fox. Or when they nailed the outcome of Super Bowls and even called Donald Trump's presidency long before it happened. It's spooky, right? It makes you sit up and go, okay, either the writers are secretly time travelers or they've got some secret window into the future. And now here we are again. Except this time, the prediction isn't about a business deal or a gadget. This one's about something so much bigger: humans going to another planet. Think about that for a second. Us, actual humans. Not just robots or rovers, but people packing up, strapping into a rocket, and blasting off on a journey across space to set foot on Mars. It sounds like science fiction, right? But the prediction says it could happen in 2026. Which, if you check your calendar, isn't just some faraway date, it's literally around the corner. So let's back up for a second. Why does this even matter? Well, for one thing, Mars has always been kind of like humanity's second home in our imagination. We've dreamed about it for centuries, written books about it, made movies about it, and stared at the night sky wondering what it would be like to stand there, looking back at Earth. But there's another layer to it too. Right now, our planet, let's be honest, is going through some rough times. Climate change, pollution, wars, overcrowding. Sometimes it feels like Earth is getting a little fragile. And when you hear about space travel, it's not just about exploring for fun, it's about survival. What if one day we actually need a backup planet? What if Mars becomes that second chance? Here's where it gets even more fascinating. The Simpsons episode I'm talking about isn't just some random gag where Bart flies to space. No, it's an episode where they explore the idea of regular people being recruited for a mission to colonize Mars. And in their timeline, that mission was supposed to happen in 2026. Now you could just shrug and say, well, it's just a cartoon, who cares? But here's the catch. Around the same time, NASA and private companies like SpaceX were publicly laying out their own ambitious plans. And guess what year kept popping up in their goals and roadmaps? You guessed it. The mid-2020s. Is it a coincidence or something stranger? That's the fun of diving into this. But before we go further, I want you to think about how weird it is that The Simpsons keeps hitting the bullseye with these predictions. Like, what are the chances? I mean, out of all the crazy jokes, out of hundreds of episodes, how do they keep landing on events that later unfold in reality? Do the writers just understand human nature so well that they can predict what's coming? Or is there some weird twist of fate going on? Honestly, sometimes it feels like the show is less of a cartoon and more of a prophecy machine disguised as comedy. And here's where the personal part comes in. Because if you're watching this right now, you've probably wondered at some point what it would feel like to live in a world where humans are truly becoming a spacefaring species. Imagine being alive at the exact moment we take that giant leap from being a planet-bound civilization to spreading out into the solar system. Imagine watching the news one morning, coffee in hand, and instead of hearing about traffic or politics, you hear, "Today, humans landed on Mars." Wouldn't that make you stop in your tracks? Wouldn't that give you chills? Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I used to look up at the stars and think, one day, people are going to be out there, And the idea that The Simpsons, of all things, this wacky, satirical cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Springfield, could have predicted when that would happen? That's just too crazy to ignore. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about prediction. It's also about the fact that 2026 really is shaping up to be a big year for space. Elon Musk has been shouting from the rooftops for years that SpaceX's Starship is going to take people to Mars sooner than anyone expects. NASA's Artemis program is laying the groundwork by sending humans back to the moon. And they've openly said that the moon is just a stepping stone to Mars. You can connect the dots. The pieces are there. The technology is almost ready. The timelines are weirdly overlapping. And when you put all of this together, suddenly, The Simpsons' Mars prediction doesn't feel like a joke anymore. It feels like a spoiler for what's about to happen. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because here's a question for you. How much of this do you think is really coincidence? And how much of it is the writers just being scarily good at observing the world? Like, did they just take a wild guess? Or did they pick up on trends and ambitions that were already out there and turn it into satire? That's something we're going to dig into in just a moment. And if you think this Mars prediction is wild, wait until I tell you about the other bizarre space-related predictions The Simpsons got right. Some of them are so specific, it'll make the hair on your arms stand up. And some of them connect directly to Mars in ways you probably never noticed before. But let's pause here for a second. Because before we dive into the evidence and the crazy details of that Mars episode, I want you to picture something. Picture yourself in 2026. Imagine you're sitting in your living room, scrolling on your phone, and suddenly every news outlet in the world lights up with the same headline. Humans have just landed on Mars. Now imagine thinking back to today, right now, and remembering this video, remembering The Simpsons prediction, and realizing, oh my god, it actually happened. How would that feel? See, that's the thing about stories like this. They're not just about connecting dots between a cartoon and reality. They're about us. They're about our dreams, our hopes, our fears, and that universal curiosity we all share when we look up at the night sky, and that's why this matters. Because if there's even a tiny chance that The Simpsons nailed this prediction, it means we are standing on the edge of one of the greatest adventures in human history. And here's the twist that's going to blow your mind even more. The way The Simpsons portrayed this Mars mission wasn't just about science and rockets. It was about people. Ordinary, flawed, funny, very human people. And that part? That might actually be the truest prediction of all. Because at the end of the day, it's not the technology that makes the story, it's the people. And that's where we're heading next. So don't go anywhere, because in the next part we're going to break down exactly what happened in that Mars episode, how it connects to NASA and SpaceX plans, and why 2026 might really be the year The Simpsons goes from comedy to prophecy. Alright, so here we are. You're probably wondering, okay, what exactly did The Simpsons show about Mars, and why are people connecting it so strongly to 2026? Let's dig into that episode. It's called the Marge-ian Chronicles, and if you've never seen it, the plot is almost too perfect to ignore. In the episode, a private space company, which feels suspiciously similar to SpaceX, invites ordinary people to sign up for a one-way trip to Mars. And of course, because this is The Simpsons, the family gets involved. Marge and Lisa both sign up, each convinced they're the one who truly belongs on this groundbreaking mission. And the company? They boldly claim the launch is happening in, you guessed it, 2026. Now, here's where it gets eerie. Remember, this episode first aired back in 2016. That's a full decade before the supposed Mars mission date. And what was happening in the real world around 2016? Elon Musk and SpaceX were making headlines everywhere. Musk had just revealed his big plan for colonizing Mars and his timeline? Mid-2020s. That's right. Around 2026. So the writers didn't just pull this number out of thin air. They were paying attention to what was happening, yes, but they also exaggerated it in that special Simpsons way, making it feel like satire. Except now, looking back, it doesn't feel like satire anymore. It feels like foreshadowing, and here's the crazy part. In the show, there's this ongoing theme about who's really ready to go to Mars. Is it the company that's rushing the mission? Is it the volunteers who might not understand the dangers? Or is it society itself, still unsure if it's ready for that leap? And doesn't that sound exactly like the debates we're having today? Some people are thrilled at the idea of humans going to Mars. Others are skeptical, pointing out how dangerous, expensive, and technically impossible it might still be. It's like The Simpsons captured not just the timeline, but the whole argument years before it exploded in real life. But let's zoom in on the details. The company in the episode is called Exodus, which feels like such a cheeky nod. Think about that word Exodus. It's literally about leaving one place behind to start over somewhere else. That's exactly how some people describe Mars colonization, humanity's backup plan. And who in real life has used almost identical language? Elon Musk again. He's gone on record saying humanity needs to become a multi-planetary species in case Earth faces a disaster. That way, our civilization doesn't just vanish, it has a second chance on another world. The parallels are so strong it almost feels like the writers had a copy of Musk's speeches years before he gave them. Now let me throw another thought at you. When the episode first aired, most viewers probably laughed and shrugged it off. Mars in 2026? Come on, it sounded like another wild joke. But here we are years later with Starship, test flights happening with NASA, preparing to send astronauts to the moon again as practice for Mars, and with entire companies being built around the idea of space tourism and interplanetary travel. Suddenly the joke doesn't sound so far-fetched, it sounds possible. And that raises a fascinating question. Do you think The Simpsons predicts the future, or does it inspire it? Like, do these ideas get planted in people's minds, writers, engineers, kids watching TV, and then those people grow up and try to make it happen? Imagine a young Elon Musk, or some future astronaut, watching The Simpsons and thinking, yeah, that's crazy, but why not? It's almost like the line between prediction and inspiration gets blurred. But here's where things take an even stranger twist. In the real world, NASA has been talking about sending humans to Mars for decades. Back in the 1960s, after Apollo, some people thought we'd be on Mars by the 1980s. That didn't happen. The technology wasn't there. The money wasn't there. But in the 2010s, those conversations started heating up again. NASA started setting dates, SpaceX started showing off rockets, and other countries like China began developing their own plans. And when you line those timelines up against that Simpsons episode, 2026 is right in the sweet spot. Not too soon to be impossible, but not too far away to lose interest. And get this. Some experts have even gone on record saying that 2026 is, in theory, possible. It's a tight squeeze, sure. The rockets have to be fully ready. The life support systems need to work. The astronauts need years of preparation. But the technology is advancing so fast that the idea isn't crazy anymore. And that's exactly what makes this prediction so juicy. Because if it does happen, people are going to look back and say, wow, The Simpsons called it again. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, cool story, but hasn't The Simpsons gotten plenty of stuff wrong too? Of course, they've made thousands of jokes, and not all of them came true. But that's what makes the accurate predictions stand out so much more. Out of all the jokes they could have made, how do they keep hitting on the ones that actually unfold? It's like finding a needle in a haystack. But The Simpsons keeps pulling out needles over and over again. And when it comes to space, this isn't their only eerie prediction. Remember the episode where Homer becomes an astronaut? That one aired long before private citizens started dreaming about space travel. And the funny thing is, NASA really did start opening the door to ordinary people in their programs years later. Even now, with missions like SpaceX's Inspiration 4, we've seen people who aren't professional astronauts launch into orbit. It's like the show has this uncanny ability to pick up on the direction humanity is heading long before the rest of us notice. But let's get back to Mars, because here's where the suspense really builds. Think about the symbolism of 2026. That year isn't just random. It's also a moment when Earth and Mars will be lined up in a way that makes travel easier. Every 2 years, there's this window when the planets are closest, and rocket launches to Mars require less fuel and time. Guess what? 2026 is one of those windows. So not only did the writers pick a year that matched SpaceX's ambitions, they accidentally picked one that's astronomically practical. Now that's spooky. And here's a little detail that most people miss. In the Marge-ian Chronicles, the volunteers sign up knowing it's a one-way trip. That's the exact same criticism people throw at Musk's Mars plans. Some scientists argue that even if we can get to Mars, we might not be able to come back for years, maybe even decades. So the first missions might really be one way, just like in the cartoon. The Simpsons didn't just predict the year, they predicted the debate. So let's step back and ask the big question. What happens if this actually comes true? What happens if in 2026, humans really do set foot on Mars? Do you think people will celebrate it as one of the greatest achievements of our time? Or do you think they'll be nervous, wondering if we're biting off more than we can chew? Because here's the truth. Mars isn't like the moon, it's way harder. It's far away. The astronauts would be isolated for months, maybe years. The surface is freezing, the atmosphere is toxic, and survival would be a constant struggle. Yet, despite all that, we're still trying. And maybe, just maybe, The Simpsons gave us a glimpse of that before anyone else. But here's the part that blows my mind the most. The Simpsons' prediction isn't just about Mars, it's about us. It's about our drive to explore, to take risks, to push the limits of what's possible. And when you look at it that way, the year 2026 doesn't just feel like a number on a calendar. It feels like a milestone in the story of humanity. And that brings us to the real kicker. If The Simpsons nailed this one, if they really called humans on Mars in 2026, then what else have they been right about that we haven't seen yet? That's the question that makes this more than just a fun theory. It makes it a puzzle, a mystery, and maybe even a roadmap for our future. But before we get too lost in speculation, let's ground ourselves. Because the final part of this story isn't just about predictions, it's about what they mean for you, for me, for all of us. It's about why this Mars prediction hits so deeply and why it might inspire you in ways you never expected. And I promise, what's coming next is the part that will really stick with you. So stick around, because in the next section, we're going to talk about what it would truly mean for humanity if The Simpsons' prediction comes true, why it's more than just a funny coincidence, and how it connects to something much bigger than Mars itself. Okay, so now we've gone through the episode, the real-world connections, and all the eerie overlaps between The Simpsons and actual space exploration. But this is where the story gets personal, where it shifts from just being about predictions and starts being about us. Because when you stop and think about it, this whole idea of humans going to Mars in 2026 isn't just some nerdy space topic. It's a mirror. It shows us who we are as a species and where we might be heading. Let me ask you something. What do you think drives people to risk everything just to explore? Why did our ancestors build boats and sail across oceans when they had no idea what was out there? Why did climbers risk their lives to reach the top of Mount Everest? Why did astronauts strap themselves into rockets that looked more like bombs with wings just to touch the moon? It's because there's something inside us that can't sit still. We're curious. We want to see what's over the next hill, what's across the sea, what's out there in the stars. And Mars? That's the next great hill. That's the new ocean. And here's the beautiful thing. Whether The Simpsons meant it or not, their little joke about 2026 taps into something bigger, the idea that we're on the edge of a new era. Imagine being part of the generation that gets to witness humanity become interplanetary. Not just in a sci-fi movie, not just in a cartoon, but for real. Imagine your kids or grandkids looking back and saying, "Yeah, my parents lived through the moment humans stepped on Mars." That's the kind of thing that goes in history books. That's the kind of thing people remember for centuries. Now, of course, it won't be easy. The Simpsons, in their way, actually got that part right too. The volunteers in the show weren't really prepared for what Mars demanded. And in real life, we aren't fully prepared either. Mars is brutal. Temperatures can drop lower than Antarctica. The air is unbreathable. Dust storms can last for months and cover the entire planet. Living there won't be like a vacation, it'll be like survival on hard mode. And yet, despite all that, there are people out there right now training, building, testing because they believe it's worth it. And here's the crazy, hopeful twist. Mars isn't just about Mars. It's about Earth. It's about us realizing how precious our home planet really is. Think about it. Every astronaut who's gone to space has said the same thing. When you look back at Earth, it changes you. You see how small and fragile our world is. You see that thin blue atmosphere, the oceans, the forests, all of it, floating in the blackness of space. And suddenly, all the things we fight about down here feel so small. That's the gift space exploration gives us. It reminds us to take care of the home we already have. So even if 2026 comes and we don't quite make it to Mars, even if the timeline slips a few years, the point is this: we're reaching for it. We're pushing ourselves towards something bigger, something beyond the day-to-day grind. And isn't that what makes life exciting? Isn't that what keeps us moving forward? And here's where the Simpsons prediction becomes more than just a trivia fact. It becomes a story about vision. About daring to imagine the impossible. Sure, it was a joke in a cartoon. But that joke planted a seed. And now, years later, we're watching that seed grow into something real. Maybe that's the lesson, that the future starts with imagination, with a crazy idea. With someone saying, "What if?" So let's play that game for a second. What if it really happens? What if, in 2026, we turn on our screens and see astronauts stepping off a spacecraft and planting their boots in the Martian soil? What if the first words spoken on Mars become as iconic as Neil Armstrong's words on the moon? What if schools all over the world stop class for a moment so kids can watch it live? And what if you get to say, "I was alive when this happened"? Now flip it. What if it doesn't happen? What if we miss the 2026 date, but the effort pushes us forward anyway, so that by 2030 or 2035, it finally does happen? Either way, the spirit of that prediction holds true. It reminds us that big things are possible, that what sounds like a joke today might be reality tomorrow. And isn't that the essence of human progress? And maybe that's the most powerful takeaway from all of this. The Simpsons didn't just predict Mars. They reminded us in their own silly way that the future is closer than we think, that we can laugh about something one day and live it the next. And if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will. So here's my question to you, sitting there right now. What's your Mars? What's that dream that feels impossible, that people might laugh at if you said it out loud? Because here's the truth. Today's jokes are often tomorrow's breakthroughs. Somebody once said flying was impossible. Somebody once said going to the moon was impossible. Somebody probably said putting a family like the Simpsons on TV for 30 years was impossible too. And yet, here we are. So maybe your dream, your Mars, is closer than you think. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real prediction hiding in this story. That we're all capable of doing something that seems crazy today, but could change the world tomorrow. And if nothing else, the next time you're watching The Simpsons and you see a wild gag about the future, don't just laugh it off. Write it down. Because who knows? 10 years from now, we might all be shaking our heads and saying, "They did it again." So, whether we actually land on Mars in 2026 or not, the bigger picture is clear. We're moving forward. We're reaching higher. We're proving once again that imagination is the spark that lights the fire of progress. And if a cartoon can help remind us of that, well, maybe that's the greatest prediction of all. And hey, if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Simpsons, Mars, and our crazy journey into the future, here's what I want you to do. Hit that like button, it really helps more people discover these stories. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think humans will really be on Mars by 2026? Or do you think it'll take a little longer? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you want more wild, fascinating, and inspiring stories like this one, make sure you subscribe and join me for the next adventure. Because if there's one thing The Simpsons has taught us, it's that the future is always closer and stranger than we expect. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.